Greetings from Washington, D.C., the United States, the Armenian National Committee of America, and the Armenian Bar Association. It is an honor to present before this distinguished gathering. I want to commend Minister Hagopian for bringing Armenian attorneys from the diaspora and Armenia together to discuss the Armenian Genocide and reparations, because it is a complex issue that neither the diaspora nor Armenia can solve alone. I'm going to discuss about the Armenian Genocide resolution efforts and the role they play in the ultimate goal of reparations as a crucial element for peaceful relations with Turkey, as well as avenues for redress. The Armenian Genocide was indeed a crime under international law at the time. The international community repeatedly stated also that reparations were in order. For instance, U.S. Secretary of State Colby wrote to the French ambassador on March 24, 1920, quote, "The government of the United States is convinced that the civilized world demands that Armenia must be so defined as to satisfy all legitimate claims of her people, and particularly she must receive free access to the sea, an indispensable condition to her existence." Thank you. The well-known Chorzów factory case between Germany and Poland for property stolen in 1922 firmly established by an international court that, quote, "It is a principle of international law that the breach of an engagement involves an obligation to make reparations in an adequate form," end quote. This case was decided by the Permanent Court of International Justice, the precursor to the International Court of Justice that's in existence today. And as Turkey has recently stated in its quest to acquire antiquities from museums around Europe that were taken decades ago, time that has passed cannot be an excuse for failing to pay reparations. Turkey's Director General of Cultural Heritage and Museums, Murat Suslu, said in September 2012, "If you come to my home and you steal precious objects from me, do I not have a right to get them back?" Turkey's cultural minister, Ertuğrul Güney, says that looting is wrong no matter when it occurred. He says, quote, "Artifacts, just like people, have souls and historical memories. When they are repatriated to their countries, the balance of nature will be restored." The quintessential example of reparations paid for a genocide is the case of Germany paying for the Holocaust. And they were not the result of a court order or an international legal process. They were the result of negotiations between states. International law played a role in framing the issue and the violations, but more important was Germany's willingness to come to terms with its crime and the pressure from the international community. It's important to note that East Germany did not pay any reparations right after the Holocaust. They paid reparations decades later when they were reunified with Germany in the 1990s. This shows that reparations can still be won many decades after the atrocities were committed. Armenian genocide legislation around the world plays an important role in keeping the pressure on Turkey and isolating Turkey's denialist position. In recent history in the United States, we have passed Armenian genocide initiatives several times, either through amendments on the House floor or in the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Each time the process has led to more awareness. When I started in 2005, there were many congressional offices who didn't even know about the Armenian genocide. Now that's not the case. Everyone knows about it. And the ANCA has moved beyond just affirmation, reaffirmation, and working towards restitution. In 2011, we worked to pass the Return of Churches Resolution, which called on Turkey to return all church properties. It passed in July 20th, 2011, just on the committee level. It eventually passed by the whole House of Representatives, but it's important, within weeks of it passing the Foreign Affairs Committee by an overwhelming vote of 43-1, where even Turkey caucus co-chair members were voting for this resolution calling on Turkey to return churches, Turkey announced that it would start returning churches within weeks of that vote. It was that international pressure that was very key to that announcement. It was a token gesture, but it was some movement. The new Armenian Genocide Truth and Justice Resolution, which was introduced in the House a couple of weeks ago, no longer is about just reaffirmation, but it's talking about consequences and Turkey's responsibility. It calls on the US President to work towards an equitable and just resolution of the Armenian Genocide, and notes US efforts towards that effort, like Wilson's Armenia. And there is progress in Turkey because of this outside pressure. You now have Cemal Pasha's grandson, Hasan Cemal, writing a book about the Armenian Genocide. And the past several years, there have been Armenian Genocide commemorations within Turkey, and not just in Istanbul now. And there was recently a conference in Turkey where Turkish citizens were calling for reparations for the Armenian Genocide. So what are the claims? There are three main baskets. There are claims that the state of Armenia has, the second basket is claims that the church has, and the third basket are claims that individuals have for properties that were taken. The state claims are most important because they concern the border. What Turkey uses as an excuse to not abide by the Treaty of Sèvres or the Wilsonian Armenia is the Kars Treaty and the Lausanne Treaty, but neither of those are valid. First of all, the Lausanne Treaty does not even deal with the border between Turkey and Armenia. The Treaty of Sèvres did. In order for Lausanne to supersede Sèvres, it would have had to address that issue, and it didn't. And on top of that, in order for Turkey to try to enforce Lausanne, it would have to abide by it. And it doesn't even do that because Lausanne requires full rights for all citizens, and Turkey continues to violate that for the Armenians and other minorities. Now, for the Treaty of Kars, Article 7 of the Treaty of Kars, well, first, Nahapetian has done great research on why the Treaty of Kars is not valid because of the signatories did not have the power to sign at the time, and Armenia was a captured nation. It's also very important to note that. And I wanted to add yet another aspect that's important is that Article 7 of the Treaty of Kars requires that Turkey keep the border open. It requires both parties to keep that border open. So by the very virtue of the blockade of Turkey, they're undermining their very argument, and Turkey has one could argue even a stronger interest in ending the blockade than Armenia, because that it would be key to being able to enforce the Treaty of Kars. Because you can't just ask one part of a treaty to be enforced and then disregard another one. But it's important for Armenia to bring up these issues in the international fora to make it clear that they are not acquiescing to the Treaty of Kars. What are some avenues of redress for state claims? One avenue is the International Court of Justice, but I think a more important avenue would be state-to-state negotiations, because the International Court of Justice can also be a very political organ, as we've seen in their decisions in the Bosnian genocide case. So one may ask, why would Turkey want to negotiate? Well, it also has an interest in negotiating because they want peace of mind. They want a border that is uncontested, and they want to be a respected regional power. And they want to strengthen their relationship with the United States and Europe. And in almost every case when the Turkey and US relations are discussed in Congress, the issue of the Armenian Genocide comes up and their treatment of minorities. They want to get this issue resolved so they can move on too. For instance, just in 2012, Turkey tried to pass a bill that would encourage or give Turkey special rights to invest in Native American lands. And it was really not that important of a bill, but they worked hard to pass it, and we were successful in defeating their efforts. And the Armenian Genocide played an important role in why members of Congress voted against it. And it was a resolution that gave Turkey special rights, or a bill actually, that gave Turkey special rights to invest in Native American lands. And because of our opposition, they changed the bill to allow just any World Trade Organization country to invest in Native American lands. But it still included some resolution or some paragraphs that promoted Turkey and said Turkey has showed a great interest in investing in Native American lands, and it implied a preference for Turkey. And so we continued our opposition, and we worked with Greek American organizations, and the bill was defeated. And it shows that and Turkey is also trying to insert itself in the negotiations between the United States and the European Union for a new trade agreement. And the ANCA, along with Greek American groups, has provided testimony opposing this inclusion of Turkey in this agreement. And we brought up the point that any chance of this being ratified by the Senate, which would be required for such a trade agreement, would be very difficult if Turkey was included in that process. And it is because of the Armenian Genocide issue is a main part of this problem. And Turkey understands that they cannot get a free trade agreement with the United States standing on their own because of this issue. And that's another reason that they would like, they should be willing to negotiate. The other basket, community claims, which are church claims, are very strong, partly because the church continues to exist as an entity. You don't have issues of entire families being destroyed and not having a successor for the property rights. And they also have more documentation of their properties. And there's been some success in the European Court of Human Rights, which is one avenue of redress. And the churches have also been working within Turkish courts to redress these issues. And finally, the individual claims for properties and loss of life. I'll talk about what's going on in the United States with a procedure called class actions, which is unique to the United States, where you're allowed to bring as one individual to represent hundreds of thousands of people who are similarly situated. And that's the case where there's been 2 different cases brought up against the Turkish state for property stolen during the Armenian Genocide. And they are the Devoyan and Bakalyan cases. And there was a recent ruling in March of 2013 from the district court, the first court of instance. And there was one very good part of the ruling and one bad part of the ruling, and both Turkey and the Armenian plaintiffs are appealing this ruling. And the one very important part of the ruling that was favorable to the Armenian plaintiffs was the ruling that Turkey is not immune for property claims, even though it's a foreign sovereign. There's an act in the United States, just like in all countries, that you cannot sue a foreign government. They have immunity, but there are exceptions. And one exception is for violations of international law. And the plaintiffs argued that even though Turkey expropriated the properties of their nationals, which normally a country can do, that's not a violation of international law, the court said because the allegations are that the properties were stolen during a genocide, that Turkey is not immune from these claims. And Turkey is appealing that part of the decision. But another part of the decision, which was not helpful or not good, was the court said, yes, Turkey's not immune from these claims, but because this is what they considered a political question, that we're not going to hear it because it's better resolved by state governments than a court. But there are, this case is being appealed to the Ninth Circuit, and the ANCA is going to be filing a brief in support of the appeal. So in conclusion, I think this is a great first start, and I look forward to working with everyone in our joint efforts. The Armenian National Committee of America has been working with several attorneys and the Armenian Bar Association closely with the class action claims that have been pursued, and we look forward to continuing our work through this body. Thank you.